Hey guys, I hope this video finds you well. This is going to be my non-spoiler thoughts on Bill and Ted Face the Music. Mostly non-spoiler anyway, which I saw today. So I'm sort of reacting to it. I was pretty pumped for this new Bill and Ted film, having grown up on the previous two movies, and it felt like a fun thing for them to bring it back now, with of course the two stars in their middle ages. And also the same writer who created the character, he works on this film. And so I'm going to get into it. Bill and Ted Face the Music, which is a new release this week in the UK. It's been out in the US, I think, about a week or two now. So pretty new movie anyway to you guys. And the basic plot is that, as it turns out, the song which was supposed to save humanity and bring the world together, the Bill and Ted hit song, turned out to be not such a big hit. We find out that it plummeted in the charts. But more important than that, on a bigger scale, because that song flopped so badly and didn't bring people together, it actually altered events in history for the worse. So it started throwing up weird sort of random stuff, and it led to a sort of a divided sort of world. And I think that kind of strikes kind of an important note about what this film is going for. And so what happens is Bill and Ted are told they have to go back in time and they have to produce a perfect song. But you get various time travel type things that they have to travel to certain points to try and change certain events which have taken place, in various points. So you get all sorts of time travel type stuff. The other sort of twist on it is that they now, obviously, having been middle-aged, they've been in relationships or they've been married for a long time to the princesses, as they were, the princesses that they first met in the first film, and they've now got teenage or young daughters anyway, young adult daughters. One of them played by Samara Weaving, who I'm a big fan of in films like Ready or Not and The Babysitter. Really fine, charming actress. And so we get this subplot with their teenage daughters, or I think they're probably meant to be early 20s, something like that. But the plot is that they discover, when Bill and Ted travel back, they discover that the whole time travel thing, and they take the opportunity to go back in time and actually help their dads, because they find out then they have to produce this big hit song. At the same time, Bill and Ted's respective marriages are on the line, and it's to do with stuff they did in the history that had an impact on their marriage. Basically, their wives sort of got fed up of being left behind, and they're sort of told this by various versions of Bill and Ted. So we get that whole double thing where we get two different versions of Bill and Ted in various scenes, multiple Bill and Teds, and they kind of play with that during the film. They actually have different, if you've seen the trailer, you've probably seen the big muscly Bill and Ted they come up with in prison. And the whole thing is that they've had a bad impact on time, so that's kind of led to the older Bill and Ted's kind of having a rougher sort of life, so they have to try and. But then there's sort of twists where they can't necessarily believe what they're being told by the future Bill and Ted's, and it probably makes a lot more sense watching the film than I'm saying. But they obviously include their wives, but also more importantly their teenage daughters. And that's basically the setup, and it's a very entertaining film. I had an absolute blast. This was the most bodacious, if I can say it, adventure. It was a brilliant return to form. I think if you like the Bill and Ted, the original movies, you're going to really love that. It really captures that nostalgia for it, and it moves the characters on. I think the time travel stuff, there's a lot of fun stuff they do. But most importantly, it's winking to the fans. It's like some cool, like, sort of like in jokes and like callbacks. I really love the stuff with Missy at the beginning. There's obviously, for people who know the movies, they know that she was like this really hot sort of like stepmom for Bill, and obviously it was a bit awkward the fact that his dad was like getting married to like this really hot sort of almost like as young as him, but a little bit older. So there's at the start there's like this wedding where Missy is getting married to yet another like member of the family. So there's a really funny joke about that. The fact that Bill basically goes through the history, the fact that Bill and Ted both asked her out when they were in high school, and then she married Bill's dad, and now she's marrying. I think it's his son. It's meant to be, which is just great. So there's all sort of like weird sort of jokes like that. There's a great like scene where they're trying to play like this ridiculously like avant-garde type bit of music at the wedding, and the whole gag is that they've kind of ended up becoming like sort of sucking. It's almost like this gag about musicians who try too hard. They just throw, because there's Ted playing like the bagpipes, and they're playing various instruments, and they're just getting these funny sort of reactions. But there's lots of great stuff like that for the fans. There's some brilliant like callbacks to Bogus Journey. I won't spoil too much, but there is a cameo from Death. William Sadler, great to see him. I absolutely loved him in Bogus Journey, and he tears it up here. There's lots of gags to do with how he was like the bassist in like Wild Stallions, and how then he kind of tried to branch out on his own, and how they kind of resent him because like there's this whole song where he like takes over on bass, where the whole song is sort of bass, and there's lots of fun little gags about kind of like the reaction he got to like certain albums. But I won't spoil it, but it was great to see Death, and there are callbacks to Bogus Journey, particularly like in the last sort of part of the film, something which happens to like the daughters. But no, it was very funny, very entertaining. There was a lot of charm to it, a lot of heart. I think there is definitely a positive message to this film, and I think a message about generation sort of thing, because as well as the daughters, we also have Rufus's sister, not sister, sorry, his daughter, who shows up. I recognise the actress actually. I couldn't think her name, but I've seen her in other stuff, and a fitting like bit of casting there. But she becomes like their point of call. But then there's this whole plot where her mother is basically turning on Bill and Ted at one point because they've sort of lost faith in them, and there's almost like this sort of plot to kill them off, and this robot who's quite an entertaining character in himself. But there's almost like this sort of line from the daughter saying, yeah, well, your generation didn't do so well neither. So there's a bit of that, but I think maybe the big takeaway message from the film is to do with about how music is universal, and about how it shouldn't not only be diverse, and you should get as much diversity in music as possible, but also how it's for everyone. It should be for the world. And we see that in the plot with basically the daughters bring together like this massive super group from the history of the world. So they do some really cool stuff with the time travel plots, where the daughters are obviously like helping out Bill and Ted. And I'll just mention the daughters because it's brilliant casting. They're really adorable and quirky, and you can tell that they're like the offspring of Bill and Ted. the sort of nerd factor is up to the roof when you have the scenes with them together. But especially Ted's daughter, she does like really get the Ted down really well. But I love Samara Weaving; she's absolutely brilliant, and yeah, there's some great stuff with the daughters, and various things. It's non-spoiler, so I won't go into it. But I would be up for another movie with the daughters as the leads. But yeah, as I said, I think this movie is very entertaining, but it's also very feel good. Very there's heart to it, which this sort of movie should have, and I think it does give you like the positive like feel, the positive vibe, and that message of, especially in these dark times, the world needs to come together. We need to work together. Because the finale with the music, which is obviously partly the finale you expect, but it's it is really beautiful. It is really moving the way they bring all this music together, and they just work all the characters into it so well. I think the middle dragged a little bit, if I would say one thing, but not too much. I was pretty thoroughly entertained throughout. Um, and yeah, there's a lot of fun with different characters. I enjoyed some of the stuff with like the therapy, because there's a gag early on where like one of the wives has insisted, and I think it's like Ted's. No, I think it's Bill's wife has insisted. Then they go to couples therapy, but then the gag is that Ted has shown up with his wife as well. So the therapist is like, well, couples therapy is normally just like one couple. So that's a great gag. But no, I had a good time with this. Really, really charming, delightful stuff. And I think it's just the film that we need right now, the feel good film of, I guess, just outside of summertime. But it was a really bodacious journey, an excellent adventure indeed. Great stuff. I highly recommend it. I think if you're a Bill and Ted fan, you're going to dig this movie. I can't wait to see it again. I had an absolute blast. So that's Bill and Ted Face the Music, which is in cinemas now. And go and see it. I'd recommend it. It'll put a smile on your face. And I'll give it 7.5 out of 10. I think it holds up pretty damn well with the original movie. So if you've seen Bill and Ted Face the Music, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you are new to the channel. And I'll be back with more new movie reviews soon. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.